Welcome, everyone, to another the Paranormal Native Crossroads. I blew that opening. Native Paranormal Crossroads. We are joined by two of the Rangers today. Michelle is on site somewhere in the north doing some very rangery business. Stan and John, welcome to the welcome to the
Yeah,
show.
yeah, a little back talk there. Um, Michelle is on a secret squirrel assignment for the Paranormal Rangers, so she is in the field as we speak. She said to say hello to everybody, and we can't tell anybody otherwise where she's at or what she's doing. Otherwise, we'll have to kill a whole bunch of people. So, and we don't
Yeah.
want to do that.
Her secret squirrel mission has something to do with a moose.
Super secret squirrel.
Yeah, super secret
Yes.
squirrel. So.
All right, guys. Today's random thoughts. And just before the show, I wanted to ask Jonathan and Stan about tracking cryptids and the mechanics of tracking, and we could open that up with today.
Well, for John and I, having done, for me, 20 something years as a law enforcement officer and 30 something years for John, most of those years we were a part of the tactical operations, SWAT training, and all that's involved in special operations. In that, as a tactical operator, in your basic uh, training courses involving SWAT, uh, you're taught man tracking and or the techniques and procedures used in tracking. So John and I were well versed in that. Not only that, but having grown up, you know, as a little child, you're put in responsible for herding sheep, and at times when you're a child and you're goofing off and not paying attention to what you should be, and then realize all of a sudden that the sheep aren't nowhere visibly in sight, then you have to, like John says, you have to adapt and overcome, and you have to, you better be able to find those sheep. so, uh, so even as a child, I think you're well versed in learning how to track different types of animals, whether it's for hunting purposes or like I said, for livestock. And I'll let John jump in there.
Yeah, tracking really is an art. Um, when you're tracking people, what you're actually doing, you're not just following tracks. That is really a very simplified explanation. What you're doing is you're following the tracks, but you're picking up ideas on personality. So, is the person that you're, excuse me, is the person that you're tracking, are they going through a hard route, through the, busting through the brush and everything else in trying to elude you, or are they taking, say, a dirt road and walking where it's easy, or they're walking on a trail? Um, are they turning around to look behind them to see where you're at? Are they zigzagging? Sometimes when somebody zigzags, you can determine which direction the zigzagging is going and actually get in front of them. So there's a lot of psychology involved. You can tell when somebody stops to take a piss, uh, or to defecate. Um, you know, if they go to a spring, sometimes they'll try to lose you by stepping on rocks, and in that case, you're or going over hard ground. And going over hard ground, you might be just looking for pebbles that are pushed into the ground a little deeper than the other ones are. to in order to see passage. Once you determine where that person is going, you can get around them. The other consideration is are you coming to an open area following the tracks? If you're following somebody who's armed, they might have set that up for you and crossed the open area and are waiting somewhere to ambush you. So now you have to box around that area, pick up the tracks on the other side. So there's a lot of tactical thinking involved. Typically, combat tracking team has two people. One tracks, and all your focus and attention is on tracking. The other one is an overwatch. So what they'll do is they'll usually have a carbine or a rifle, and they'll be watching for the tracker, the surrounding terrain, to make sure that nobody hops out with a little surprise for them. So you're just going to follow the tracks. Cryptid tracking is actually easy by comparison because now you're just following tracks.
What's some of
And you're adapting those techniques that you have in law enforcement tracking to whatever it is you might be tracking that falls under the paranormal supernatural. The challenge there is that uh, with different types of paranormal phenomenon, uh, you're typically not going to have the same kind of tracks that are left by humans. Yeah, you might have that in those kind of cases involving maybe a Bigfoot or something that is primarily physical in nature. Um, but when you start dealing with things that can shapeshift or use different types of abilities and phenomena to change shape, to change, let's say, to that of an orb, or change to a different type of physical being. Let's say something changes into that of a bird, uh, or maybe a coyote or something of this nature. You have to be aware and looking for those characteristics of that changing.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, that stuff does happen. I have seen Polaroid photographs that my grandfather took of handprints and footprints in the ground, where some you would almost imagine somebody was actually down on all fours, their hands and their feet showing, and the tracks actually morph into animal tracks. And
I've actually witnessed that same thing in one of the early cases that I had involving witchcraft.
so that stuff does happen. Um, it's rather unnerving when you run into that, because then you realize that every animal out there could be something that it's really not.
And can be stalking you.
Yeah, I think the only time that I've ever had the hair raise up on the back of my neck was me and Stan were at 10,000 feet up in the mountains, and a a mountain lion was tracking us. He was upslope of us. We knew he was there, and we just quietly talked to each other and says, "Okay, there's a lion upslope of us. He's been paralleling our course for some time, looking at us, and we probably look like a pretty good snack. So we better get off this mountain." And we slowly, without panicking or anything, we just changed direction and started making our way back down, and we made it out of there without getting attacked.
Well, that
So,
can be creepy. That can be creepy watching something, change from one form to another right in the tracks in front of you, I might put the hairs on the back of my head stand up too.
It's it catches you off guard the first time you see something like that, and then you just keep going on. I mean, the job has to get done, and if you don't do it, nobody else will.
How do you tell if tracks are starting to decay like over a period of a couple days or something like that?
Well, ground contains moisture, and that moisture stays in the soil. So up to a certain point, and depending on what the weather is doing, um, it'll start to degrade. The tracks in in a regular environment will start to dry up, and you'll see it just like you were pouring cement, and the cement would start to dry. You'd start seeing that change in the consistency of the cement and the moisture level. In other
The
cases,
more the more recent in a track is, the more clear definition usually is going to be there, and it'll begin to degrade over time.
yeah, so that's one of the things you're looking at. The other thing is environmental conditions. It could be raining, and you're going to lose your tracks really quick. There could be snow, and the tracks are in snow, and you have to know how to look at those tracks and see how fresh they are. Um, and to give you some ideas, we track. I've tracked people and caught them, and I've even tracked vehicles for 30 miles, just looking at the tire tracks and following them, uh, driving another vehicle. And we caught the guy. It was a stolen vehicle. But um, when you're doing stuff like that, there's always uh, an interesting thing going on, because you're trying to get in the mind of the person that you're tracking, and to understand who they are and what they're doing, and what's motivating them at the time.
So
So if we were
Another
to
thing, another thing is that, especially on the navigation, you have so many different types of environment, and um, so the soil composition may be changing several times during that process of tracking. You may start out in, let's say, an area that is predominantly red clay. So, again, like John said, depending on the weather conditions, you may have really clearly defined impressions there. Um, and then gradually, as the tracking progresses, you may go through a sandy loam type of consistency of the soil, river bottom that's predominantly sand, and then back to maybe a rocky, hard clay or caliche clay type of consistency. So it can be challenging on the navigation if it's if you're tracking over a great distance.
Can you still track across rock?
Oh, you can.
so
You can.
with the tracking, is it all just done by the observation of the eye? Then is there any technology used? Because you must have to have pretty good eyesight to start. Yeah, is there any technology used at all alongside it, or is it just by eye?
You can use. I like to use a fiberglass rod that is about 4 or 5 feet in length, and you can actually use that as a tool to, as you're searching for sign within let's say within a pattern. Uh, you might be searching with bands and rays, meaning uh, out away from you, and then side to side. So you might use that as a tool. That's what I like using, to be able to try to determine if as you're cutting sign or looking for types of changes uh, in the tracks, or maybe the vegetation, you're looking for something that where there's a change. Maybe it can just be a broken fiber, a plant fiber, or something. Um, and I'll let John talk a little bit about it.
Is
Yeah,
it fair to say it's a highly intuitive state?
yeah. You're putting all of your concentration into it. You're looking for really minute clues,
Mhm.
and almost sounded like Inspector Clouseau there, looking for clues. Anyway, um, you put all of yourself into this, and this is why you have an overwatch, because you're concentrating on the ground. You might walk right up on the person and not even see them, but to your partner, he's out there standing right in the open, and but you don't have that ability to just look around everywhere and keep your concentration on the ground. Um, so there's a
It's
lot.
similar to when you have uh, a sniper team where you have an observer as the other person is the weapons operator. You're as a team of two individuals. You're like John said, the role of the person that has Overwatch is tasked with protecting the person that's focusing on the actual tracking.
Mhm.
Yeah,
When
and
I would go rock hounding, there would oftentimes the ground would speak to me, look here, look there, along with my standard gaze. I used what's called a T scan. I'd scan like a letter T, and then I'd keep repeating and repeating that letter T from, 90 degrees left to 90 degrees right, and I do short T and long T, and then there would just be times the energies would speak. Does that kind of work the same way with tracking?
oh,
I kind
definitely.
of think I kind of think with the paranormal or supernatural, that's even more so because for me, I think you're relying more on your gut instinct in some situations there, and trying to rely on that. You may not have the overt threat that you have within the law enforcement man tracking. But there again, it depends. I mean, if it's something related to witchcraft, there can be an existing threat there too.
Yeah, so
So,
to give you an idea though, um, we consider ourselves fair trackers. We can do a pretty good job. I have actually seen I saw an elderly Navajo woman. Somebody ran two of her horses off a cliff, chased them, and out of a whole herd, just two of them went over and died. So she was pretty upset, and we went out and we tracked it. She was able to look at horse hoof prints in the dirt, 15 different horses, and she was able to say, this is the roan, this is the white one, this is the bay, um, and she had names for them, and she knew every one of their foot tracks. And to me, a hoof print kind of looked like a hoof print, and she's saying, oh, they're over here, they're running over here, they're cantering, they're whatever mannerism they're doing. She was able to decipher that just like nothing. And you hear about native trackers along the border that track drug runners, and the drug runners put shag carpet on their shoes, on the bottom of their shoes, so that they won't leave definitive tracks. You know how they found them? They When you have a shag rug, it has these little glittery fibers within the material, and they found tiny little discarded glittery fiber on the ground here and there, and were able to track them based on that. So, some people are really, really good at it. I'm kind of, middling in my own view, but I can get the job done pretty accurately. But I've seen some that would be absolute master trackers.
What's been your like longest tracks, to find something or find someone? Like have you done it over weeks or months or days?
The average set for me seems to be about 3 to 4 miles. Although the longest I've tracked somebody was for a full day, 30 miles.
Wow.
For me, my first experience with that is within the first few weeks that I came on as a ranger, I was assigned to what was known as the Four Corners Manhunt. There was three militia fugitives that had killed a Cortez police officer and then fled out into the Four Corners region, which is all Red Rock canyons, and there's some of the San Juan River that runs through there. And in the river bottom, you have the heavy river bottom growth of uh, uh, Russian
Tamarind.
olive, tamarisk, a lot of different types of brush. I remember at times working with that team that I was assigned to, we would be crawling on our hands and knees and belly through that brush, and I could be within 2, 3 feet of one of my team members and not even be able to see them. So that was my first experience with that. And these guys were heavily armed; they had fully automatic weapons, um, so it was pretty intense at times.
Was that connected to that train thing that happened a number of years back where they blew up a train?
No, no,
No,
that
No.
wasn't. That was a couple of survivalists that had been pulled over by an officer, and they basically jumped out and shot him.
Okay.
So um,
that was Dale Claxton was the Cortez, Colorado police officer.
one of the things that Stan didn't talk about, and I know it affected him quite a bit. When you're out there, you're in the environment. If it's hot, you're hot. If you're going to be sweating and just being uncomfortable. In Stan's case, he was in the river bottom, and I can tell you from experience, they have kamikaze mosquitoes in there that'll literally
Yeah.
just come at you and attack you like like your blood's going out of style. And for them, it's life or death. So, I think at one point Stan came out of the brush. He had over 200 bite marks on his body that he could count. So,
Yeah, it
Ouch.
was over 300 uh, welts and bites on my arms, and yeah,
so yeah, it's tracking can be fun. Um,
yeah,
I've been in the river bottom area and just been attacked by swarms of them. So now we carry those little nets that you put over your bush hat,
Mm.
and you try to tape up your sleeves and wear gloves and everything, and the doggone things will bite you right through your clothing. So
I've recently been watching videos on killer bee removals. You ever run into any killer bee nests?
mm,
I
uh,
have,
yeah, I've seen them and try to.
yeah, a couple of
I've used
times.
them a few times. I've tried to stay away from them, but they have moving hordes of bees that
Yeah.
change locations, and the queen goes with them, and they'll you'll see them, covering a fire hydrant or something like that as they're moving.
I saw a video just the other day. It was a tree, must have been about 15 feet tall, kind of bushy. The entire tree was a mass of moving bees, and the beekeeper said there had to have been at least 500,000 bees on the tree.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of thing on the Navajo Nation a couple of times in my career.
They
There
literally just
were
take garbage bags and throw the bees into the garbage bags.
Oh,
What
I
they
thought
were
that.
able to do in one case was to actually drive a vehicle with a box like what you put a refrigerator in, cardboard box, drive the vehicle underneath it, and then saw the limb off so the hive of the bees falls down into the box and you close it up.
Yep.
You transfer that somewhere where where it's not going to affect the community.
So
What other
yeah.
kind of strange animals do you run into? I mean, not
I,
just the cryptids. Like you have like, the recently the idea is that there are actually puma in inside the Four Corners area.
John can elaborate on some of that.
oh man. yeah, we all have always had mountain lions here. And whether you call them pumas or mountain lions or whatever, they're out there. They tend to be solitary. They tend to run a 50 square mile territory. And so when you get say, some sheep killed by one or whatever, they're not going to come back to the carcasses for another 30 days. And that's usually kind of, give or take, that's what we look at as a timeline. So, yeah, they can be very, very dangerous. Um, we don't deal with them very much, but occasionally they come and take some livestock or a calf or two, and they're gone again.
Yeah, they're very elusive.
Now, the scariest wild animal I've ever dealt with, though, believe it or not, it was along the river, Little Colorado River in this case. Um, there are tamarisk and Russian olives, all of that kind of stuff. When I was inside, I was hiking some of the trails, and I was looking for a guy that was setting fires in the brush. And what I saw was a young female cow. She was wild. She had no brands on her and exceptionally intelligent. Um, and she stalked me through there. And that was a little creepy just because I knew what she was doing and she wasn't letting up. Every time I turned around, she was there in the brush looking at me and just making her way closer and closer. But there's a big, big difference between a wild cow and what we see out on the farm. What you see on the farm, they're domesticated. They're used to, they just kind of slowly wander around and chew the grass and chew the cud and whatever. But this one, she was up, she was alert, her eyes were big, they were intelligent, and she didn't mean me any good. So I was happy when I finally got out of that place.
A lot of wild horses and donkeys.
Yes, too
Oh,
many of them.
definitely, definitely. I remember on a, a monitoring trip that I was taking on the Grand Canyon, we would, as we approached the confluence, they would pull the watercraft ashore, and we would be allowed to hike up to the confluence. And there's a place there that you can get up on top of the rocks and jump off into the water, which is crystal clear for about a good 25 or 30 feet deep. And so we were doing that individually, hiking up to that point. And I remember as I was climbing through these rocks, boulders, basically bouldering, I come up to this one and I look up. There's a bighorn sheep about a foot and a half away from me, looking me straight in the face. And I just, when I seen that, I just gradually backed down the way I had gone, so not to get head butted uh, off that cliff. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, you were on the no water side, so that wouldn't have
Mm,
been good.
yeah. So yeah, you do encounter a lot of different types of wildlife. I used
Anything
to
in the water?
know what's that?
Anything in the water? I mean, there have been
Oh,
old
definitely.
stories of giant-sized carp and fish in there.
On the San Juan River one time, I was up there patrolling near at that time near Paiute Farms and Copper Canyon, and on the San Juan River, which is the northern boundary of the Navajo Reservation. And I was actually checking uh, fishing permits and boating permits and that kind of thing. Uh, and as I was up there and it was quiet, and a little later there was two non-natives that came up in a boat, and I waved them over, and they come up to me, and they were wide-eyed, and they said, "Oh my God!" As we were coming up earlier, like 30 minutes earlier, we hooked into something that was pulling our boat, and they had like a 25-foot boat, and it was pulling their boat sideways, and they thought it was going to capsize their boat. And so this is one of those tributaries into Lake Powell, which is quite deep, and but I've seen some catfish in Oklahoma that uh, are the size uh, that could probably swallow a human being, and I've been told by an individual who was a welder on the Navajo generating station. He talked to some people one time and said that he had contacted a diver that had been in Lake Powell. They were looking for an elderly couple that had drowned by a slab of rock that had fell on them, and they were out every day looking for that elderly couple's remains. And he was meeting with them in the evening after he got off his shift from welding at the Windy Mesa Bar in Page, Arizona, and so he was talking to one of the divers. He said, "Have you found the couple yet?" And I said, "No, no, we didn't find them today." And he basically asked him, "What time are you going out tomorrow?" And the diver said, "I ain't going out tomorrow." He said, "I came face to face with a dead catfish today that could have swallowed me whole." So,
Wow. Back in
yeah.
the early 1800s and into the early 1900s, in the swamp, Louisiana, Mississippi River, and the tributaries, there was a fish called an alligator gar. You guys familiar
Oh,
with
yeah.
that fish?
Yeah, I
That
am.
fish would regularly eat people. It would take people from the edge of the river like an alligator until
Yeah.
they started hunting it relentlessly. They were it was just like they would hunt the wolves or the coyotes. And by 1915, 1918, they had eliminated the majority of the alligator gar, but it was a regular journey. You don't go up to next to the water because this fish could be 600, 700 pounds easy.
I think there are still some alligator gar, like in the Arkansas River and the, uh, like, let's say the Illinois River.
Mhm.
So I think there are still some.
I'm sure the population survives somehow, but
Oh, yeah.
the documentary I was watching, it says the alligator gar can live 80 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's
Are there shellfish along the Colorado River, like freshwater clams or mussels?
yeah, you'll usually find them along there, just in specific areas. So they're not everywhere. Lately, what they're concerned about is something called the zebra mussel
Yep.
that's been making its way into Arizona, and
It's an
they're
invasive
Yeah, we
type of
got it up
mussel.
here in Lake Erie. It's a disaster.
yeah, so they're trying to I guess, slow that down. Although that'd be like kind of the little Dutch boy sticking his finger in a hole in the wall.
Dyke.
Yeah, so I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to work. But yeah, we're aware of some of that. We've also seen reptiles. We've had numerous reports of huge snakes on the reservation here, and along with other types of thunderbird sightings and things like that. So there's all kinds of interesting deals going on. I had a report of somebody along the San Juan River up in the Utah portion that saw a small group of what they described as miniature Tyrannosaurus rexes that were all in a group um, walking, and they said that they said they were only about 3 feet tall.
That's like the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park.
Right, right. So but they were sure. They said they looked like little dinosaurs.
I
Well, you
used
never know
to
what's out there.
I used to date a girl whose grandfather was one of the Navajo code talkers, and him and I used to get into all kinds of discussions on all kinds of topics. And one time we were talking, and he had said that it was him, his daughter, and his little granddaughter had gone up in this small canyon area on the Navajo reservation, and they had they had gone way back into this little canyon, and uh, they said they got to. He said they got to a one point where there was a ledge, uh, I guess red rock sandstone ledge that, as the flow of water carved, with erosion through that little canyon. And he said they got to this one ledge, and he happened to look over, and he said coiled up down further below him was a snake that was easily twice as big around as he was. And
Wow.
he said, I've traveled the world, in the military, and I've seen boa constrictors and pythons, and he said this thing dwarfed any of those type of snakes. And he said his daughter and his granddaughter uh, also witnessed this particular snake.
Did they know what kind of snake it was?
That I don't know. I know John and I have worked cases in certain locations, but I remember one that we dealt with a location where it was referred to as Satan Butte, and I'll let John describe some of why it was called Satan Butte.
Yeah, early on in the early 1800s, there were a lot of stories from Navajos living in that area that there was a giant snake that lived up there, and there was a big hole in the ground somewhere where the snake would come out of. And that doesn't strike me as odd because this is a volcanic vent, and that's eroded, so it's all basalt up on top, and there's a lot of cracks and holes and everything else up there, probably even lava tubes. So, but they said that because of that, none of the Navajos would go up there anymore and be anywhere near it. So,
They would occasionally lose livestock, supposedly to this snake, and they wouldn't even go looking for their livestock, even though livestock are very, very important to the livelihood of the Navajos.
So yeah, all kinds of fun stuff out here. And just in my own patrols, I've seen 15-foot snakes, bull snakes, crawling across the road and spanning the whole width of the road. And
Wow.
I'm not too afraid of snakes, but I really didn't want to bother that one.
There's a
So,
taboo with the Navajo involving snakes. And I remember one time John and I were on a dignitary protection detail involving one of the candidates that was running for president. And within this small area where they were campaigning, and that all of a sudden there was a snake that was within there, and man, it was causing people were panicking and everything. And they let John know. John walks over there, picks it up, and then just walks it out, just like nothing, you know. And I got a kick out of that because many Navajos, because of the taboos, won't have anything to do with that. Now, the Hopi, they are snake handlers. It's a part of their religious ceremonies and stuff. But Navajos are exactly opposite of that. I think it's because the taboos there because uh, a lot of these taboos were there to help ensure the safety of the Navajo people. You know, uh, so if you have a strong taboo against snakes and you avoid them pretty much at all costs, then there's probably a less likelihood of you getting bit by, let's say, a poisonous snake like a viper or rattlesnake. You know, which is which is you can find rattlesnakes on the Neville Reservation. So back in the day, if you were to get bit by a rattlesnake, it could be a lethal or fatal uh, incident.
Did you come across
so
many wolves?
Many
I
wolves.
have witnessed. I have witnessed in my years on the Navajo reservation at least two or three times that I've actually seen what that I know as a timber wolf, not a Mexican wolf, but an actual timber wolf, like what is generally found in Colorado and some of the northern states. Although the biologists and fish and wildlife personnel have adamantly told me, "Oh, we don't have those kind of wolves on within the boundary of the Navajo reservation." But I've witnessed at least three times where I would I would say that that's what that is. It's a timber wolf.
Yeah, and I had one too where uh, a yearling calf was taken down, and when I got to the scene, there were two wolves standing over the carcass, eating on it, and they you can't mistake them. Huge, huge paws, just huge animals. Um, Again, just like Stan said, the biologists with Navajo Nation says, "Oh, there's no such thing. We don't have them down here." They told me the same thing after seeing a black jaguar in a place near Witch Wells, uh, south of Sanders, and while I was on patrol, and it was a big one, and I'll never forget it. You know, the the fur was shiny. It had spots that you could see that were kind of dull on it, and so the whole thing, you could see the spots, but if you just looked at it, it just looked black. And
like it was a cat, like a black camo with the spots with inside the blackness. The
yeah,
same documentary I was watching on showed trail camera footage in the Four Corners region of a puma that's orange with black spots and black with the spots like you were talking about. And it
yeah,
wasn't just one or two; it was quite a few. And what they were surmising in this thing is that they could travel between 50 and 100 miles in a day, and they would have a massively wide range to search for food.
Well,
In
and
northeast Oklahoma, growing up there, um, there were stories of individuals, including my grandmother, that had witnessed actual black panthers
Yep.
in northeast Oklahoma. So, and then again, wildlife personnel will say, "Oh, you don't have those there." But going back to the wolf real quick, um, the closest thing in this particular region that is commonly found would be what's termed as a Mexican wolf, and these are, you get that, what they describe and classify as a lobo, which is somewhat smaller uh, wolf physically than what you'll have as a timber wolf. Quite a bit of difference between the two,
And that's because of
especially
the
the
food
markings.
the timber wolf's eating elk and elk and elk and a very high protein, high protein, high protein, high protein versus the desert food that they whatever they can get.
yeah.
Yes,
So before you were talking about caves, is there a big cave system all throughout the Four Corners region? Do you guys know of?
Well, we've been in a place called Paiute Cave. We were mapping it with some people from USGS and National Speleo Society. So we've actually made 500 vertical feet underground in that one, and that was kind of a scary one because the cave is what we would classify as a live cave. There's a You go in and there's one big uh, kind of
Boulder
like
Field.
a dome shaped area about as big as a football field, and it's angled down, and in it are these massive boulders just everywhere, and a lot of the boulders are loose. When we were going down in there, one of the guys that was with us just about took a boulder in the chest, from somebody that knocked one over, and it came crashing down and rolling, kind of Indiana Jones style. So all of this is going on. Me and Stan ran into some rocks that were about as big as mobile home or trailer houses, and you could take it and lift up on one side. It was cantilevered, and it would move just with you pushing it like a teeter totter. And when you realize that that thing's just balanced and could slide off that thing, and boy, you're going to have a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Um, so we went in that one. There's Around Meteor Crater, there's a series of tectonic cracks that formed when that thing hit 50,000 years ago. And there's been reports out of Winslow of people that have gone in a crack underground and were lost for 3 days before they found their way out. So there's lots and lots of stories like that. And the cracks radiate out for a good 100 miles in all directions.
Are there any myths or legends of things living in the tunnels or the caves?
Um, None that I know of, although, things are always, it seems, associated with that kind of stuff, but I've never actually heard of an incident where something they said was actually down there, a cryptid or anything else.
I
We do
think there are some that, if you go back to the Navos emergence story and or creation story, the monsters that are detailed within that, there were some that inhabited cliffs and some caves and things of that nature. So yeah, but
Yeah,
going way back. So
Mhm.
and the Navajo skinwalkers are said to try to locate caves to have their, I guess you'd call it a Sabbath, um, something where they get get a group of them together and meet uh, for transferring knowledge amongst themselves. Uh,
Mhm.
so these things happen. I know me and my cousin used to try to get to some caves to look at them. We never quite made it, and maybe that's a good thing. Um, and looking in caves is always really interesting. But word of caution to everybody out there: you get gas buildup in some of these caves. Some of them can be radioactive. Um, some can have methane gas. So if you light a match, you just blow yourself up, and they'll be kind of scraping you off the cave walls after that. So there are some dangers. Um, we do have natural gas. Natural gas from the well is odorless. They actually add they actually add the rotten egg smell into gas so that you can smell it, but naturally it has no odor and it's heavier than air, so it tends to settle. And we've actually seen people out in these oil fields where there's a low spot, and they get into this and they end up dying because they're suffocated. Um, and they didn't realize that this is out there. That there's kind of like, if you would, a small swimming pool of gas that you can't see, and you walk into it, and boom, now you
You're
can't breathe
done.
anymore, and you die.
Yeah. Are there any legends or myths of giants while the time of the Navajo were in that areas in the early histories?
Yes, there are lots of them. In I'm going to refer to it as Navajo verbal history, and there are quite a number of stories about giants. And so, in the days past, they had what they called the giant slayers, the twins that were born and raised to kill monsters. Or they were called the monster slayers. And so you had that in the background. Um, and then there's supposedly skulls and skeletal material of giants, just like up in Utah area and back east, that actually fought native tribes up in that area.
I think when you look at the archaeological evidence and you look at pictographs and petroglyphs in this particular region, those depictions convey information that there were different types of beings and creatures and cryptids, I guess, uh, within this particular region, and could could be encountered. I think maybe John can elaborate some on the pictographs and petroglyphs and stuff.
Yeah, there's boy, I got a frog in my throat and it's rubbing its feet against my tonsils. There are a lot of everybody looks at pictographs, petroglyphs, and they say, "Oh, this is rock art." You know, um, that this is art. This is just doodling, art for art's sake, and that's not the case. These were actual markers, as you would, um, telling people behind them, this is which clan came through here. This is a migration route going this way. Um, these are the water sources. This is what kind of animals can be hunted in this area and what time of year they can be hunted. There's a lot of information. And included in these are pictures of giants with 3 fingers. And I've seen some with 6 fingers. So they're out there. They're shown, and they put these to chisel this stuff into the rock is a monumental feat. Sometimes these panels are way up on the cliff, and you wonder, good grief, how'd they get up there to work on that thing? And I've actually tried to take similar material and take modern tools and make my own petroglyph. And boy, I tell you what, it's hard work. And imagine these guys doing it with stone tools. So I can't even begin to think how long it took them. So
and
there's
or being perched up on a cliffside too.
right. So there's a lot of evidence, and that evidence is all over the American Southwest. Um, and I'm talking, all the way up to the Canadian border, all the way across the western United States. Um, there's evidence like that, even down into Mexico.
So does Bigfoot appear as a petroglyph or something like it?
Oh yeah, Bigfoot is indicated in petroglyphs. You see his foot on there. That matches pretty much what we see as tracks today. Although some of them could be clan markers, but some of them there's no mistaking it. Some of the giants that are pictured are hairy, and and then we've also seen some that show parrots, that are carved into the rock, sitting on something. And we don't have parrots here. They have parrots in South America.
Or
So
camels and elephants too.
yeah, what looks like a mastodon. We've seen that, and we're going, hey, these rock carvings are done about at around 1070 or 1000s, and yet here's a picture of a mastodon with the long tusk coming out.
I do know there is some what they call coprolite or um, fossilized feces from mammoth in the Grand Canyon area.
Fossilized feces. Mom,
Yeah,
Yeah,
look what I found.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just think in 1,000 years, what you dump could be a coprolite.
uh, well, is there
Well,
anything on the comments that we may need to address?
somebody was asking if you know any native paranormal, sorry, any native remote viewers.
Remote viewers. Um, I would think maybe Michelle. John, is Michelle a remote viewer? Or
I think she knows how. I think she knows how it works.
okay?
I know of a few of them. One of them won't do it anymore. Um, they
Oh
were
yeah,
able to do it on their own, just picking it up by themselves. And they said that they were able to go forward in time and see the future, and they were able to go backward in time and accurately see the past. And at one point, they came back to their body that was still in the bed. And they said when they got back, there were four shadow people standing around the body, and they wouldn't let that person back into the body. And I guess there was a little bit of a tussle there, and that person finally got back in their own body. And they said after that, they were so freaked out. They said, never again. I'll never do it again. So, but they were actually able to see the future rather effectively, and were able to relate some of that.
I view that like Ouija boards. you know, Ouija boards are not something for children or the novice to mess around with. These are portals that can be readily opened and allow something very negative uh, to come through, and once it does, it's very difficult to get close that gate and put
Yeah,
that back on the other side.
I've been told that if you're going to do remote viewing, get professional training to do it, because there are things that you can do to protect yourself. Otherwise, there are other things within those realms that can maybe cause you some harm. And so, it's just like going diving and you don't have an air supply. That's only going to last so long as you can hold your breath, and then at some point, you got to take a breath sometime. So they call I think they call that the autonomic nervous system. That you don't think when you breathe, and when your body desperately needs air, you're going to suck it in and get a lungful of water. So always be cautious, be safe doing any of this stuff, even ghost hunting and cryptid hunting and all this stuff. Uh, think safety first. That's what me and Stan are always doing.
I see so many people thinking that they can start a paranormal channel and walk into a haunted house, and they're straight up atheists or have no belief system whatsoever, and they're not afraid, and then they get welts on their body, and then they reason everything away as it's coincidence, this that, and then they end up getting haunted as hell because their
Yeah, it
arrogance, their
happens.
ego drives them to keep putting these videos up.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit.
Yeah, again, whatever you're doing, try to be safe about it. Um,
They don't know what safe is.
True,
yeah,
They don't even
well,
true.
understand that there's a
we,
concept.
we
Yeah.
we all want that little bit of, we want people to look at us. Look, you know, how does
For
that
the
old
excitement, the
how does that
excitement
old
of
Saturday night
dabbling.
thing? Look what I can do. you know, it's it's just in our nature to want people to watch us and look at us, and at my age, I don't care anymore. People want to make fun of me. That's fine. I don't. It's not. You're not running my life. I am. So, and me and Stan came out with this idea that we needed to talk about paranormal stuff, uh, because we said we're getting too old to worry about what people think about us. And this was in a time when people still ridiculed you for talking about UFOs, back in 2010, 2011. And since then, it's changed quite a bit. Now the government's halfway, admitting grudgingly that there's something out there. And, now we're seeing more and more evidence of this. So we can say pretty accurately that, yeah, what we've been talking about is real. It is true. And, but some of this stuff can hurt you.
Definitely.
Well, guys, I think it's
And
the end of the show. We did it a solid hour talking from tracking to cryptids to dinosaur poop, petrified poop.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
you guys go to the Paranormal Rangers website, get a hold of them there, sign up to be a member over there. It's been special. I love doing these shows with you guys. Any last words you guys want to have?
Yeah, this weekend we will be in Toronto, Canada, with the Cree Indian tribe at a Bigfoot conference. So, if you're in that area, I don't know if we have any listeners from Canada, but that's where we'll be Saturday and Sunday.
Do you have the website for the conference? Do you know the website name for the conference,
Uh,
or a way to get a hold of the conference, or the name of the conference?
I don't know. I just know it's in Toronto, and it's
Okay.
hosted by the Cree tribe.
Okay. All right, everybody. Been a great show. We will be back. I screwed up the ending too. We will be back next Wednesday with another amazing show. All right, guys. Have a great day.